Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday Sit Down. I am Reverend Phil Dieke. I'm one of the pastors here at White Rock United Methodist Church. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm really excited about this sit down. Many of you know that about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, I don't even know time anymore. What is time these days? I got to go down to the border with Texas Impact. So I'm a board member with Texas Impact, which is an advocacy organization here in Texas, which have been very busy right now. Because if you're unaware, the Texas legislation is happening right now, and there's just a lot going on. But in the midst of that, I and another board member, Alex, and then our old friend Neil went down to the border along with our friends Sid and Sarah. So Sid Earnheart and Sarah Cruz, who have associations and are on staff with Texas Impact, are joining me this morning to kind of share the things that we experienced, all the things that happened in the 2.5 days that we were down there, and what we'll get to at the end is ways that you too can be involved in all that was happening at the border, and hopefully opportunities for you two to go and join us at the border for a Ports and Porch trip coming up in the next month or so. You think, guys? Month and a half?
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, exactly, something like that. So Sarah, Sid, why don't y'all just introduce yourselves real briefly here, and then we'll kind of dive into what we experienced.
So, hi, everybody. My name is Sarah Cruz. I'm the policy specialist with Texas Impact. I primarily focus, though, on immigration policy and border issues.
And we stayed in McAllen, but you are a Weslaco native, right? Which is right there down by McAllen.
Yes, sir. So I'm born and raised in Weslaco, so I've been in the Valley forever.
Forever, which is really helpful whenever we were trying to find good places to eat, No pressure there to find the right place to eat for us. It was awesome. And then Sid?
I'm so sorry.
My name is, like you said, Phil, my name is Sid Earnheart. I am a part-time pastoral fellow and legal fellow with Texas Impact. And then I'm also I work part-time as the executive director for Justice for Our Neighbors in Dallas-Fort Worth, which is United Methodist Immigration Ministry.
So you actually live outside of Houston right now, but you're here in Grapevine in the Dallas area today, huh?
That is true, yes. And I actually went to the Greyhound bus station this morning to see some of the migrants that were traveling down from the border with some of the grannies and the abuelas.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, let's start there. What did you experience?
I guess so. There are, I guess I would say like this. So for example, when we were down at the border, right? When we were down at the bus station in Brownsville, we saw people that were getting on buses to go other places in the United States. And Sarah can probably shed more light on this or tell me if I'm saying this incorrectly. But one thing we found from different conversations with different people is that there are, in a lot of cases, if people are going especially to the East Coast, they will be on a bus ride from Brownsville or McAllen to the Dallas area. And that's kind of the jump off point to go wherever else you're going to go east. I would say primarily when we hear about people going east in the United States to wherever sponsorships or families that they're going to. Today it was interesting. People that are going to the bus station every day in Dallas, some of the grannies they were telling me that everyone we met today actually came from El Paso, which was new. They had not seen that before. And so we probably met with, I will say, between 10 and 20 total migrants. And this was between the hours of about 6 a.m. and probably 8:30 this morning. Wow. That were either already at the bus station or coming in and in transit basically to their final destinations.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask Sid a question really quickly. It's okay.
Totally.
Sid, when you say the grannies, who are the grannies? Are they the Angry Theas and abuelas of the RGV, or is this a wider network of these?
Yeah, so Grannies Respond is a wider network, but they're all connected and work together. I guess we'll say like this, right? They're two, as I understand it, and again, I take it for what it is, right? As I understand it, there are two I'll say networks that are separate, but I'll say work in affiliation with one another. And kind of, I think what you're going to hear more about as we talk a little bit more about things is there's this kind of unofficial network, I would say, Sarah, of organizations, starting with groups down in the Valley and including, but not limited to, statewide groups in Texas like Texas Impact that are kind of working together and banding together and kind of filling in gaps, if you will, in different places. And it's spreading happening nationwide, if you will, from what I'm kind of seeing and understanding.
So we kind of went a little backwards, right? So this is almost not necessarily the direct endpoint, right? It's often, like you said, DFW is kind of an in-between point where people are headed to. But let's go back and start with, Monday, where we began in, first arriving in Brownsville and then crossing the border over into Matamoros. And one of the things I love is we have a specific story of somebody that we met in Matamoros while we were with a lady named Gladys, who has an organization, and I should have had my notes pulled up of what the organization's name is. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Also, because it's in Spanish. Do you have it, Sarah?
It's ayudándoles. Oh, I forget the last part all the time, but I'll pull it up on my phone. I have it somewhere.
Okay.
And then I'll get back to you.
So share with us a little bit, Sarah, about what it is that Gladys been doing. And then, if you remember the story, I think it was Miriam. Will you tell us her story a little bit?
So I don't know too much in detail about Miriam's story, but Gladys just provides a lot of resources to people who have been waiting in Mexico. And a lot of her, current clients are people who've been waiting in Mexico for more than 2 years for an opportunity to make an asylum claim. And so, she kind of points them in direction of, here's some legal help that you can get, or helping them with their papers that they need to do so they can get processed into the U.S. So she's been and also I think just the local community, from what we saw, loves her. She was very well known in the area. We were walking down the street and, people from the Global Response Management Group were there saying, hi Gladys. So I think, the work that she's been doing has been really helpful to a lot of the people. And I think it gives them hope while they're waiting in Mexico, that at some point, yes, I'm going to be able to make my asylum claim. And so then she took us to, this large area where the migrant camp used to be. So those are the people that were part of MPP. Now it's been torn down. And so you can kind of look over and see the river and see just how close people were to the US and how, they woke up every day in this camp and just had to look over. And I don't know, that was the part that really got to me a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. And what was there? There were about 2,000 people in that encampment?
At the most, there was 2,000 people.
Yeah.
And it was a large area. I wish we could put up a picture so people could see, but it was a fairly big.
Yeah, if you follow our Facebook page, I put some pictures on our Facebook page. You can go, and I didn't get the fullness of the encampment because it was so big. But if you go back and look at the pictures I posted on our Facebook page, just the chain link fence that has razor wire at the top of it, that is now what surrounds the encampment. So that'll give you a sense of kind of what Sarah was just talking about. And yeah, Gladys was, I mean, what an incredible woman, right? And when we did walk up and down the streets, it seemed like everybody knew her. And we talked to her for almost 2 hours, I think, right? And in the 2 hours we were there, probably 4 times we got interrupted, and I'm saying interrupted in like the best way possible, because it was people coming in and thanking her for the work that they're doing, because their asylum was being processed and they were going to get to go across. And so that's where we got to meet Miriam. And I think she had like a 1-year-old son.
She had she was a toddler, and so she was going to get processed that day. I think he was a toddler, and they were going to get processed that day because her son had a certain vulnerability, right? Didn't he have a murmur or
that's right,
something like that, right?
That's right. Yeah, and so we saw her at Gladys, and then we were at Brownsville bus station that afternoon volunteering with Team Brownsville, and there she was, right? We're like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And so then Alex, who spoke way better Spanish than me for sure, sat down and kind of got to hear her whole story and talked about she was from Honduras, and she'd been there for 2 years and working to try to get across. And then she was going to be on a bus later to head to Houston, and arriving at like 4:30 in the morning or something like that. And that's where her sponsor was somewhere in the Houston area. So that's a little bit of the process, right? Like, and so people that you saw today, Sid, right, are folks who are coming from El Paso, which I assume means they probably crossed at Juarez, right? From Juarez?
Yeah, that's where we actually talked with some people who had been in Matamoros and actually had been flown over there, kind of some of the things that we're hearing more about, and others who had crossed there as well. And they had been placed on a bus, in some cases after having tried to, claim asylum at the port of entry in Matamoros. They had been flown to El Paso in order to be processed, had finally been processed, and now we're riding a bus all the way back to Dallas to go somewhere on the East Coast. And I'll say in many instances were going to be spending, in some cases, either they would end up spending hours at the Dallas bus station, and I mean literally like 8 to 14 in some cases with people I talked to today, all the way to people who were, even if they got to Dallas and were only going to be there for a couple of hours, it was because they were going to literally spend the next 2 days. For example, I met, I'll say a gentleman who was probably about 17 years old today who was riding a bus to Philadelphia, and he doesn't get there for 2 more days, basically. So today's the 13th. He doesn't get there until the 15th in the morning. And he'll spend all this time in bus stations along the way.
That's okay. So you mentioned that a lot of them are being flown over to El Paso. Is that because of Title 42? And if so, can y'all help us understand Title 42 possibly? Maybe.
I have a question about that for Sid, if he knows a little bit more about this, because from my understanding, people who are expelled under Title 42 and then, flown to El Paso and then expelled into Juarez, it's because they're not accepting the families in the state of Tamaulipas because the children is under 7 years of age. So I'm wondering, why do you know why they were flying them to El Paso, even though they were still paroling them into the U.S.? Is there any information about that?
The answer is I don't, because like you, I guess kind of like what the same question that I had for them. And I will say that either through my, I guess I'll say lack of Spanish and perhaps, getting lost in translation, or they didn't know either. But I was, I guess, kind of, I'll say it like this, Sarah, why don't you explain the process as we understand it to be, and then I will, if I learned anything different today, I will fill it in. How about that? But I was confused as well. How about that? So.
Okay, so the Title 42 order that's been in place for more than a year now, because the pandemic has been going on for since March 2020. And so when the pandemic started, they closed the border to non-essential traffic. And then there was a simultaneous CDC order that says anybody who arrives at or, between a port of entry without any valid documents to enter the US, they are subject to this order and can be expelled. So that's what's been happening since the beginning of the pandemic. They're expelling people under this order, under the COVID pandemic, because they could pose a risk of spreading the disease in the US. That's what the order says. And so, even though the US is kind of opening up a little bit and people are getting vaccinated, this order still remains. And it's been something that, public health experts have said is absolutely unnecessary, that we can adhere to our obligations to provide people protection and, protect the public health of Americans, but it still stays. And so under the order, people have been expelled into cities like Reynosa, in Nuevo Laredo, Juarez, and, there's no indication of when the Biden administration will lift that order. So that's what's been happening.
So this can take us kind of in our conversation that we had with Hugo then, because one of the things that he said to us, and I love that he was like, I don't want to get real political on this, but the reality was there were difficulties with the last administration, and the better side of it is that we knew what to expect. The tough part with this administration is that we haven't always known what to expect, and it seems like things are changing pretty rapidly. There's not a lot of transparency, and so it was interesting to hear his perspective of that. Will you share, Sid, what his role is? And honestly, I want to talk as much as possible about Hugo, because he's going to come and join us on Thursday for our Church and Society gathering that you are all invited to at noon on Thursday, to talk about kind of this partnership that the city of Brownsville has with these NGOs, non-government organizations.
Sure. So Hugo is someone that we met, that Sarah and I got connected to through some other connections down the valley. He is the executive director of Good Neighbor Settlement House, which is a United Methodist organization. I guess I'll do a
That was a terrible time for the. Oh, there we go. You said we lost you for a second. You said, I guess I'll do a.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know, because you guys froze on my end, so I wasn't sure if it was me or you.
You froze on our end.
I was like, well, everyone froze. It's probably me, right? Okay, sorry. So I guess I'll do a small commercial for Good Neighbor Settlement House, at least from what I know of them. So one of the things that they do, aside from being very involved with the city of Brownsville, they offer, for example, they do a lot of housing and feeding of the homeless population in Brownsville. So they provide as I understand it, 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 5 days a week to anybody in the city of Brownsville who needs a meal. That's one of the things that they do. They also have, I believe, a food pantry, and then also kind of a resource center as well. That was, I think, more active and going in terms of being an actual shelter pre-pandemic, if you will. They also, in terms of the efforts related to offering migrants resources, it's kind of my understanding, because of their partnership with the city of Brownsville, that a lot of those connections and a lot of resources flow through Good Neighbor Settlement House. And so they've partnered with Team Brownsville, and Sarah probably knows more about this than I do because of, well, quite frankly, because she lives there and has been there more than I have. But they partner with Team Brownsville and a lot of other organizations to, take part in the relief efforts and the humanitarian efforts that you're seeing down there.
Do you want to add anything to that, Sarah?
No, I was just going to say they've been a constant presence at the bus station. I mean, we can talk a little bit about the bus station and our experiences there, but Team Brownsville's one of the ones that's kind of spearheading that effort there. But I think one of the things that we should highlight is just how involved the city of Brownsville has been in this response to, people arriving at the border.
Yeah, I think that was one of the most inspiring things for me was the collaboration between the NGOs and the city. One of the things that we kind of bang our heads against the wall here in Dallas is that we don't always have great cooperation from the city. And we're working on that, right? Like some of the work we do through Faith Forward Dallas specifically here is we're getting there, but we're not there. And that's one of the reasons I'm really excited to have Ugo come join us on Thursday is to continue these conversations and say, like, help us understand how you got to this point, and I'm just really excited to hear that from him. And, even the building, right? Like we got to tour a building that the city they just gave it to them, right? They gave them to these nonprofits to come in and refab it and make it a space where they can store stuff and bring people in. And it's right across from the bus station. So it just gave them a space to use that's like prime location for them.
And not even that, it's just so before DHS took over testing for people who arrived at the bus station, the city of Brownsville was the one that was doing the testing. So, they've been there at the beginning. They've really they've really stepped up, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we have like a couple of minutes left. We haven't even gotten to what happened in McAllen and the things that took place on Tuesday, or the connections we had with First UMC McAllen. And then I'm so anxious to hear if you guys have made connections with Border Patrol after talking. So there's so much more to talk about, which is why, again, I'm going to invite everyone to come on Thursday at noon. You can find on our Facebook under the events page, there's a link there for the Church and Society gathering. Anyone's welcome to come and join it. It'll be a good conversation. We'll have some other churches from the Dallas area come and join us as well. But since we only have a minute and a half or so left, 2 minutes, what are the things that you really wish, both of you here, people who haven't been to the border yet, what is the one thing you'd communicate to them about the whole scenario that's taking place?
Shotgun, Sid, you go first.
Sorry, it totally froze on my end. What's the question? I'm happy to answer first. It literally just totally froze out.
If you could communicate one thing to people having not been to the border and not seen what's down there, what's one thing you communicate to them?
That's a good question. I'll say hope.
One thing is...
Yeah.
It's hard, right? You say hope?
I would say hope. Sorry, it's my connection's really bad. Of course, now that we went live, right?
Totally.
Yeah, right. Okay, but yeah, I'll say hope on my end. And here's what I mean by that. It's a dire situation for the migrants themselves. I mean, the journeys that people have taken from Central America to get here, the reasons that they're leaving and coming and claiming asylum at the border are, tragic. They go through just things that we can't even possibly imagine or fathom here living in the United States, right? All of that is horrible. And I guess the hope piece comes in when you see, especially when you consider how, our government has continued to, I guess I'll just say, kind of marginalize and oppress these people that are coming here just seeking some kind of help and relief with everything that they've already been through. Both, I'll say, the previous administration and the current one, continues today. And you just see all of these wonderful people and organizations that are specifically down in the Valley, and bringing in resources and people from other places as well, but just people that are there on the ground every day doing this wonderful work, and just saying, finally, when these people have been processed, finally, when they've come into the U.S., even though they may have days-long bus rides with little food and whatever else, there's at least a face, there's at least a group, there's at least some people there showing them that there are people who care, there are people that care about you, and that are here to welcome you into this country.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Sid. What about you, Sarah?
So I'm going to take a little bit of a different perspective. I'm going to say that we need to continue calling all of our representatives and continue, screaming on social media about the fact that we need to lift this order. We need to have a plan, and we need to lift this order, because, this isn't how asylum is supposed to be working. If someone presents themselves at the border, says they have a fear of returning to their country, they should be allowed to make their claim. It doesn't make sense to continue having this order here saying it's, because the coronavirus could be spread into the US, when, one of the experiences that we all had was we were able to go cross like nothing. It was so simple, such an easy process without any hiccups. I don't even think they questioned us, at length about why we were in Mexico.
Right.
And these are people who are trying to seek protection. They have a fear of leaving of being returned to their home, and they didn't choose to leave their home. They had to. It wasn't, a viable option. It wasn't a place that they could be anymore. And they made this, 1,000-mile journey. Some people are traveling for months, and it's just, we need to ask the administration to finally lift this order and let people make their asylum claim. So, you don't necessarily need to come to the border to see that, but I think having that experience does, show you, hey, why is this happening, and why are we, treating people this way? So.
Well, I'll use the term that Gladys kept saying over and over again, right? Like, it's really complicated. It's really complicated. It's somewhere between hope and I don't know how to summarize what you just said in one word, Sarah, but it's somewhere between there, there's this really complicated, and at least going down, you get to experience it with your own eyes and come back and be able to share those stories. So thank you all for giving us a little bit of an insight here at our congregation to do that. Again, come and join us on Thursday. We'll have a little bit more of a conversation with what happened in McAllen. And then we'll also have Ugo there, who can really help us have some conversations about, ways that we here in Dallas can be really beneficial too. So thank you all for joining me. I'm really grateful for your time this morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you for having us.
All right, y'all, hang around. We're going to be back for worship in just a few minutes, so we'll see you soon.